And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. All in Crypto here. And today we've got a video we are very excited to present. We're going to be talking about Cardano, ADA, and how the vision is now coming together. We're going to be talking and really trying to sum up all the moving parts of Cardano. Now, you have Ouroboros and the consensus mechanism, which is the main chain. But you have all these things that I'm sure many of you are now hearing about, like Mithril, Marlow, Midnight, Hydra, and we're going to be trying to sum up how this kind of an ecosystem works and how actually Cardano may be the choice for builders because of the benefits that all of these other protocols combined with Ouroboros as a consensus will give builders on top of the Cardano space. And of course, you have now got Marlow and Mithril. I believe both are live along with Hydra. That essentially, if you were a builder and you wanted to create a kind of very scalable, easily built, very fast node syncing application, these actually allow, and of course you've got Plutus, you've got a number of other things that you will be able to essentially, Tala Prism that you'll be able to use to benefit your DApp and application. So we are going to be talking about this. First of all, I want to go over two huge announcements. Of course, this is from Input Output. Want to streamline the node sync time with Mithril? It's possible. Discover how Mithril enhances efficient security and scalability for Cardano network, and learn how to get involved. Mithril nears mainnet. So I'm not 100% sure whether this is actually live yet. We can actually go over and check GitHub repositories and commits, which we're going to do. We're going to be talking about Intersect, which is basically going to take on the load of Input Output's repositories and kind of give them to the community in the vehicle of Intersect. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. We'll be going over a clip of Charles Hoskinson from his recent video talking about Intersect, where he talks about Cardano and the moving sort of parts of it. And then I'll go over to the ADA chart and actually look to draw all over it and kind of show you maybe an example of how all this works and gets put together. So you've got Mithril. Of course, Mithril is basically a way of compressing the node so that you don't have to, it will really update deadless and things like this. You don't have to sort of... It's similar to Algorand state proofs, right? It kind of gives you an as good a verifiability or an as secure verifiability as downloading the whole node. It's like a checkpoint that you sort of will use to give you really fast finality on kind of securing that node. We've also got Marlow. So the Marlow launch event united a diverse community of individuals and organizations. This is now live, exchanging invaluable insight and ideas for Marlow adoption and the future of smart contracts. For anybody that doesn't know, Marlow is essentially almost like a toolkit that will allow people to easily build smart contracts. I'm actually going to have a go of this myself. And you've got things like Hydra that are live. You've got lots of things. If we come over to Input Output's GitHub, and we look at repositories, you can see that these are all the things that are being worked on. Cardano is consistently up there with Polkadot, which we're also a massive fan of that blockchain. Cardano and Polkadot are almost two of my favorites. They are consistently up there in terms of GitHub commits because they are actively worked on and zealously driven blockchain. So you can see things like Hydra. You've got 1 hour ago, this was updated in terms of the code and the GitHub. You've got Plutus, of course, which is the smart contract language. You've got simple Haskell APIs for LMDB. Now, I don't even know what that means. So I don't have a technical background, but we kind of, we speak to lots of people that build, not just in Cardano, but across the board. You've got the Lace wallet, Cardano node test, Marlow, Cardano, Marlow smart contract language, Cardano implementation, which we've just been talking about. You've got SDKs, you've got a number of things coming. We've got an interview with Mickey from Wing Riders coming out soon. These are all the repositories. And I think it gets quite confusing because these are, and do not actually, there's not really much of a change to the main chain or Ouroboros with these, but these are kind of protocols that will add to the Cardano ecosystem that will allow people to be essentially able to build monster smart contracts. And by monster smart contracts, I mean supercharged smart contracts that other chains simply don't offer. So if you are looking to build on a blockchain, Cardano may become an obvious choice because of all of these protocols, like Marlow, like Midnight for privacy, like Hydra for scalability. You know, it's essentially an unlimited scaling solution, Hydra, when it's properly implemented. I know there's some issues with it right now, and you know, we're at a very early stage, but this has always been the vision for Cardano. Not only has Ouroboros all been built with the aim of being able to consent multiple chains, and you've got layer 2s and layer 1s. We're going to be doing another video on that and going back into that. But actually, all of these protocols have been written on paper and now built to be put into practice to solve issues and future-proof Cardano moving forwards, and solve issues that were, at the time, perhaps not so obvious, but now very obvious, that were going to arise as we move on to becoming more and more of a bigger space. You know, Cardano cannot be understated. And I honestly think that it is one of the most misunderstood blockchains that there are. You have some amazing features with Cardano. Ouroboros, of course, the consensus mechanism. I think in terms of concepts, in terms of design, is probably one of the best staking mechanisms and consensuses that there are. And I actually think that things like EUTXO, you know, being able to send multiple tokens in one transaction, is something that you simply don't have with most other blockchains. Yes, Cardano might not be the fastest at the moment. It might not be the most scalable. It might not have the most throughput. It might not be the most cost efficient. However, all of these things that are being worked on zealously do look to give it those abilities. And this is, you know, we've called Cardano time and time again the tortoise of blockchains. And we really do mean that. And I do think, just like the hare and the tortoise story, the tortoise will prevail. Let's talk about Intersect quickly before we go over to a clip of Charles Hoskinson, and then I'll try and sort of sum things up on an ADA chart of how this kind of works in a bit of a practical-ish example. But we've got Intersect here, which essentially is you're going to have a move from this being where all the work is done and posted to an Intersect GitHub, building together to drive Cardano forward. This, again, all ties in with the kind of Voltaire era, which we spoke about, which is where Cardano basically gets given over to the community. Okay, and you will be able to vote. You will be able to fund with the treasury what you want forward and what you don't. You know, we do have some areas of concern with Cardano, like, for example, one is they don't have the institutional partnerships that others do, but maybe that's a good thing. Cardano wasn't built to cushion up to the institutions. It was built for the people to use, not necessarily for the institutions, but it will have capabilities that may attract them. And I do think that's one area it kind of lacks. It doesn't quite have the institutional adoption or the partnerships like most of the others that we see. But it may become an obvious choice, certainly with things like Atala Prism and these other things that we need to cover. We're going to be doing a lot more Cardano content. We've got loads of Cardano interviews coming out for you with builders in the Cardano ecosystem and elsewhere. But Intersect is a members-based organization for the Cardano ecosystem, putting the community at the center of Cardano's development. And again, essentially, this is going to take over from input-output, and you'll be able to sort of vote on things. You can even change the name of Intersect if you want. You know, this is the kind of vision for Cardano, a self-governing system, living and breathing organism, and with Ouroboros at the kind of beating heart of it. Talking about all of these different protocols, let's go over now to a clip of Charles Hoskinson actually talking about these, comparing it to kind of a Linux suite, and actually how this might seem weird in a kind of cryptocurrency context, but actually this is generally how things are done. You know, you have lots of different tools, lots of different... how many of you guys are familiar with playing World of Warcraft? This is a really bad example, or any other game on the PC where you can add add-ons. It's kind of similar to that, you know, and they will essentially, if your character in WoW was the consensus, you can add all these things on that make life a lot easier for you, and you know, you can do whatever, you know, you need to as a result of it. That's probably a bad analogy, but one actually, because I'm not sure many people will get it, but one that's actually kind of accurate. Let's listen to Charles now talk about how all of these things integrate and how you'll be able to... what I'm envisioning is really this kind of super app. You'll be able to create kind of super applications. You know, there's protocols for interoperability. There's lots of things coming that will essentially maybe make Cardano the obvious choice to build, because it will solve a lot of the problems that other blockchains won't be able to do. And again, back to the whole ethos of Cardano. They wanted the security layer, the secure layer, which is Ouroboros. And then they said, look, we don't need it to do everything. We can build layer 2s, applications, protocols that we can sort of attach to it to give it all the features that people will need. So let's go ahead and listen to this clip of Charles. We'll draw how this kind of looks, and then I'll love and leave you.
Cardano as your top level project. But then you have these other projects like Hydra, for example, Open Prism, Plutus as the language, because that's different, Marlow. And just like Linux with the Hyperledger Foundation, and let me go and show you guys this because you might not be aware of it, and it's super cool. So if you go to hyperledger.org, you can take a look and see, wait a minute, Hyperledger is not just one thing. We all think Fabric. Well, actually, no, there's also Solang. I think that's on the Solana side. Noncreds, Bevel, Cacti, Calipercello, Firefly, Sawtooth, Indie, Fabric, Besu, Aries. You look at the full landscape. Look at all this stuff. So what it is a governance structure for how to handle a lot of projects. Well, if you are a dApp developer and you're doing some dApp stuff, maybe you don't want to have to figure out, God, how do I manage an open source project? How do I handle all this stuff? You now have a model for your dApps to plug their repos, their code, and there's a broader collaborative structure and transitivity between these types of things. So the Intersect as a members-based organization is very much just like Hyperledger or the broader Linux Foundation in that it becomes kind of a master of managing these types of concerns. And so it gives the option to the dApp developer to have a place to go, partially or completely, to embed different programs within. Just super cool if you think about. And what's really nice about it is as Cardano's governance gets bigger, what's going to happen is that governance is, when we talk about funding buckets, that governance can actually provide consent to provide funding for some community projects which are deemed to be essential. And that is how you build a self-sustaining ecosystem.
I don't want to play too much. I'll leave a link to Charles's videos as always. We always take a lot from them, and actually we've got a lot of Ada videos coming out because he's been on fire recently. Cardano gets a lot of criticism, and I think some of it is warranted. Very small amount of it is warranted. The majority of it is just a complete lack of understanding for Cardano, for the protocol, and what it's trying to do. You know, it is essentially the most similar to Bitcoin in terms of its design as a smart contract, layer one, and also its ambition for becoming adopted. It's not sought out institutions, just like Bitcoin sought to challenge institutions. Cardano has done the exact same thing, and we are nothing short of a fan. Hopefully you guys have found that video entertaining. You know, we've often gone over and we've looked at ADA as this is your Ouroboros, this is the main chain. You're essentially going to have applications that are verified by this, but they can be on side chains and they can implement things like Hydra, which will essentially, you know, you'll have this entire concurrent sort of vertical or horizontal scaling to the main chain, which will be the security layer, and you'll be able to tackle things like scalability, interoperability, privacy with Midnight. You know, Marlow, you'll be able to implement and create your smart contracts and then choose what you want to benefit from. You know, it's really a very bright future ahead of Cardano. And the really nice thing about being interested and involved with this project for as long as I've been is actually it's happening. You know, the more and more time goes on, the more and more things get done. And it has very much, I never really fully understood this concept of future proofing, but Cardano has done exactly that. It's addressed problems that they saw coming down the road. Instead of saying, we'll fix it when we get there, they've fixed it previously. And you've got this kind of, you know, the hare's now sleeping and the tortoise is catching up. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Hopefully you all enjoyed this content. If you did, and you now have a bit of a better understanding about how all these things are going to interconnect and communicate, A like and a comment is always appreciated. The last thing for me to do is give a shout out to my stake pool. We've really struggled to get the stake for this pool, and we've been running it since 2001, and we've continued to do so despite even at times it being unprofitable. But we're going to continue to do that because, again, we're interested in the blockchain. We have a real interest in it, and we want to validate it and eventually, hopefully, take it to the point where we're helping layer 2s on Cardano and so on and so forth, because Ouroboros, the stake pool operators, can actually validate multiple chains, and hopefully we get a chance and a shot at doing all that. So if you do want to stake your ADA, we offer a 1.5% margin, which is a lot lower than others, and we are consistently minting blocks every epoch now. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Again, a like and a comment is appreciated, and I'll see you all in the next YouTube video. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you in the next.